Funding for this episode is provided by Mark and Claudia Thompson. Their gift supports the Bismarck Historical Society's mission to learn, preserve, and promote Bismarck's history.
He wanted to take his boots with him. I asked if I gave him $10 for those boots, if I could have them as a conversation piece. So I have them out in the front window. It is still amazing to me when I see those that somebody was actually wearing those. They were that worn out. Gartner's Capital Shoe Hospital has been around for 4 generations. My grandfather, my dad, myself, and my son. My grandfather was Jacob Gartner. He actually passed away in 53, and I was not born until 60. So I really didn't know him. Most people knew where J.C. Penney was. So my grandfather had a store or a building in that area. And he started that in 22. And in 52, they wanted to tear those down to put in Pennies. And so my grandpa was put into a situation where he had to find a new place. So by 53, they had started building Pennies. Unfortunately, my grandfather died in 53, and my father then found a place downstairs under Cow and Drug, which had been on the corner of 4th and Broadway. That was going to be just a temporary location. So Dad was there from 53 to 78, about as temporary as it gets. 78, he found this place that we're in here, and we purchased it and remodeled. And we have been at this location on the corner of 3rd and Thayer since 78. My grandfather, in 22, he started selling shoes. That only lasted 1 year. And he started then thinking he needed something more than that because he had to put them all on sale. So in 23, he actually changed over and started adding the shoe repair. Back in the 40s, my grandfather was contracted with a few of the other shoe repair shops in town. There was 4 at that time to do all of the work for the Army. And so they got big pallets full of boots and shoes, and they would just go through and do whatever is necessary and get them taken care of. And then they would use the train to get them back to where they needed to go. And that kept them going for quite a while. My grandmother, she used to block and clean hats. That was a big thing back then. My grandfather just did all of the repairs that were needed. It's kind of funny. I've looked back at the history and in the ledgers, and back in the 30s, my grandpa would charge 65 cents for soles and heels on a pair of shoes. 65 cents. But I'm guessing back then a pair of shoes was maybe $5. And so I guess it all falls into place. But I would look at it and think to myself, 65 cents. My dad loved this business. If he wasn't at home with Mom or the kids, us, he was working. And I remember as a little guy, he would work from 8 to 6, and then he would come home for supper, play with us, and then leave again at about 8, and sometimes come home at 2 or 3 in the morning. But it's what he knew.
I did work with my grandfather for right around about 8 years. I think if I would have looked back on it a little differently, I probably would have soaked it up a little bit more. But at 15, 16, 17, you really don't think too much about that. You're in the prime of your young years, and you're concerned about yourself. And, now that I'm getting a little older and have kids of my own, you definitely start to look at things a little differently.
You know, Dad and I had a lot of years together. I worked with Dad 45 years. My dad retired at 88. Should have maybe retired a little earlier, but he didn't. And, you know, the older I'm getting, I understand why. I didn't understand at that time. But I look at it now and I think it was very comfortable for him. He loved being here. And so he just wanted to be. You know, as Dad got older, there was a couple restaurants in town we would go to. I'd take Dad for lunch and my son would come with, and a couple of the waitresses that knew us, you know, they'd go, "Well, here comes the Gartner boys." Dad was just always so thrilled. "We're here," you know, and that was really good.
I do remember a lot of times going out for lunch. It was always really enjoyable. You know, I mean, it was that quiet time that you actually got to sit down. I mean, when I started here, Grandpa obviously was, you know, in his later years. So, I mean, things kind of started to set in as age pulled on him. And, I mean, he was always pretty active. But when you got him in a quiet setting, you could have some real good conversations with him. You know, but he did. He enjoyed having me and Dad here with him. He just loved this place. This was his pride and his joy.
Loved my dad dearly. He was a good man. He treated people fair. Learned a lot of things from him. When my dad passed away, there was a gentleman by the name of Jim that worked for Dad for about 9 years back in the 50s. And he had come back and said he had heard that Dad had passed away and had to come to his funeral. And it was really very nice. He actually said, you know, he said, Ernie was really stern, told you how it had to be, very matter of fact. And he said, you know, he really turned me into the man I am. I'm doing it because my father did it, and I enjoyed doing it. And I'm pretty sure my dad did it because back in those days, you had no option but to help your folks. When Dad would show you how to do something, you would learn. I think I did things a bit different than he did. I think my son does a little different than I do. But you just took the knowledge you had and make it work for whatever situation. And so it doesn't take any more than common sense and a little hand skill, you know, to do what is necessary. But yeah, I shined shoes for about 2 years. And probably around 75, 76, I started to repair. And I just got into that, you know. And so Dad never forced me. He always said, you know, this is a job here for you. If you enjoy it, this would be a good thing for you. I think he was pretty happy when I decided to, just as I'm very happy that my son has decided to. We did have a shop down at Kirkwood that we opened in 85. I did that myself, and I kept that until 2006. And the mall was a fun place to be. Everything we did there was while you wait. So we got it down to where you could do a pair of soles and heels for a gentleman on a pair of Western boots for, I would guess in about 20 or 30 minutes. You did that and that only, and then you would move on to the next job. And it was always nice because you actually got a chance to talk to the individuals. You'd find out about what was going on in their life, what they were thinking, if they were sad, if they were happy. And I always enjoyed trying to make sure if they came in without a smile, that they would leave with one.
When you're selling shoes to an individual, you really have to assess the situation for each individual because no individual is exactly the same. You know, you can have similarities to the situation, but you have to assess it all as a unique individual because how their gait pattern walks, what ways they rotate, where you have to support that foot, whether you need a boot, whether you need a shoe. All of that comes into play. And that's where when Dad started the orthopedics upstairs, that really gave us huge insight into how the foot and the body work, you know, because you have to understand how things mechanically move.
The O&P labs, or orthotic and prosthetic labs, use us a lot. I think back in the day, they probably had their own technicians, but as life has changed, they don't have that ability to have those people either because nobody's getting into that field. So they come to the first guy that they think would do the job, and that would have been us. And I've learned a lot. I actually learned a lot under one of the prosthetists in town. He sat me down, told me how he wanted things done. And, it really does help when you know what the outcome's going to be. And so we have done that for like a long time.
I started when I was 13, which at this point would have been 20 years ago. Dad had Mom drop me off down here after school. I was in the 8th grade, and she would drop me off at about 3 o'clock after I got out. I would shine shoes until 6, and Dad would bring me home. And I remember being here much younger than that. Wasn't working, but Dad would bring me down after hours when he had to work late, and he would let me work and kind of play with the leather. And that's kind of how I got started too. For a young individual, I know 20 years sounds like a lot of time to be in a career. But, I've always looked at this, you look all over the world, and most countries around the world, you are a master of your career in art by the time you are your mid-30s and 40s, because you've started at a young age. Your parents, you followed that line of family business. When I was in my early 20s, I was probably a lot more hesitant about working here for the rest of my life. I would say I looked at it like a marriage. When you're committing to a family business, you're really committing to it for the duration of your life, which is not something to take lightly. And I think it needs to be thought about long and hard. I feel like young individuals are pushed into careers too fast in today's world, because at 18, 19, 20, what idea do we really have about what we honestly want? I don't feel like Dad ever pushed me to get into this. It was always one of those, if you felt like this was what you wanted to do, you should explore that option. And I would feel the same for my daughters. I mean, if one of them, both of them, none of them, take any interest in this, I'm going to support them no matter what. But it would always be cool to see this extended one more generation.
Help tell the stories of Bismarck's past and become a financial sponsor of this program. Contact info@bismarckhistory.org to learn more.
We go through a lot of shoes every day. I would guess we probably go anywhere from 30 pair to 80 pair every day. And so when you look at getting them done, it isn't slow and wonderful. It is, let's work, let's get this stuff done. And you just have to have a different drive to do that.
I have this older lady who comes in, and she brings her heels in stiletto style, 6-7 inch heel. I asked her one day, I said, how do you walk in those? And she told me, she said, my mother and father shipped me off to lady school. And she said, of course, they go through and teach you how to be a fine lady. And she said, they teach you how to properly walk in heels. She said, if you are taught how to walk properly in heels, they are the most comfortable thing out there. And I always thought that was just incredible, because I'm like, it's too much for me.
I've got a pair of old boots out in front. The gentleman had brought them in probably back in the 80s. He had them so worn out, a pair of Western boots. He was from Montana, just driving through. The sole was gone. His feet were touching the ground. There was no insole. The heel was worn off to the side so bad I don't know how he could wear them. There was nothing left of that boot. Big holes on the side, and he wondered if I could fix them while he waited. And I said, it doesn't matter if I can do it while you wait. There's nothing left to fix. I said, it's done. And I proceeded to show him a pair of new Western boots. Very hesitantly, he said, well, I'll try them. And I did sell him a new pair of Western boots. He wanted to take his boots with him. I asked if I gave him $10 for those boots, if I could have them as a conversation piece. So I have them out in the front window. It is still amazing to me when I see those, that somebody was actually wearing those. They were that worn out. But some of those, that would be something that we've had for quite a while. We've got customers coming from everywhere, all the way down through Lemon. I've had a few people come in from, the Aberdeen area, and some of that. Years back, we had a gentleman that ended up in Guam. And he called my dad and said, I don't know where to get these fixed, so can I send them back? And my dad said, well, sure you can. And he sent back a pair of beautiful Stingray Western boots, all black with a little white, spot in the middle. Oh, they were beautiful. Wanted Dad to resole them and heal them and send them back to him. And, we've got a lot of people from a lot of different areas that still do that because, unfortunately, you don't see this kind of service in a lot of places. We've got some people that have followed us forever. When I was shining shoes in the 70s, they were coming in. And, they're a lot older now, but they're still coming in. And you just got to meet a lot of good folks through the years, a lot of good folks. I think the biggest problem we've got going now is there isn't a lot of people that want to explore this as a job. And even getting into something like this now to start new would probably be so costly that they would really have to know what they're doing, in order to make that work. And so it's you see less of us because of that. And so when you look at the changes through the years, when I was shining shoes in the 70s, my dad was getting $20, 1995, for soles and heels. And my wage at that time was $1 an hour. Dad always said if you had a pair of Western boots, a good sole and heel job should be a third the price. And when you look at boots now, they're right around that $280 to $350, and we're about a third the price. And so that has not changed much. It's funny, as long as I've done this, for the 50 years I've done it, the problems don't change. The needs don't change. People still need to do the same things they did even back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, all the way through. It would be nice to think that everybody has no issues with their feet, but there's so many people that do, and there's really nobody that knows what to do. So we're kind of that middle guy, some of them, what am I going to do? And so when you do it for them, metatarsal pads, plantar fasciitis, there's so many different things, leg length discrepancies. They come in and say, I need 4 inches added to this shoe. And we still do all of that. And there's really nobody else that really does that anymore.
I mean, I think if you follow your heart and you do what you really want to, I think family business is a great route to go. I mean, I really would like to see a lot of other young individuals out there explore the idea of the family business and not shut it down so quickly. I mean, don't get me wrong. Everything comes with its ups and downs. You're going to have frustrations with any job you have. But the wonderful things you can get and take from a family business are fantastic. I think it definitely outweighs just shutting it down completely.
Help tell the stories of Bismarck's past and become a financial sponsor of this program. Contact info@bismarckhistory.org to learn more.